Another Sunday afternoon brings another opportunity for the Eagles to see what they're made of and find themselves galvanized by the adversity they speak of overcoming. In their way, a Carolina Panthers team on the rise, loaded with young talent and speed everywhere. And we are, as always, thrilled to have you with us here on the Kickoff Show, presented by Axalta. A beautiful day in Carolina, not such a beautiful day in South Philadelphia. Amy Campbell and Fran Duffy joining you as always. Fran, we've talked about it with this Eagles team for many months. This team is going to be a work in progress, a young team with a lot of talent, facing a Carolina team off to a hot start this season.
Yeah, a lot of just small mistakes for this Eagles team, and those small mistakes mount up. This is a squad that's still looking together, or put together their first complete game since week 1. And I think they're hoping to do that once again on the road here in week 5.
Yeah, it's going to be a really fun matchup, I think, as we head out to watch the warm-ups, thanks to PA Lottery. Jalen Hurts, will start with him, of course, coming off of what head coach Nick Sirianni called one of the best quarterback performances that he has ever seen. Sirianni praising Hurts' consistency there. And it's going to be a tough matchup for this quarterback against this Carolina defense that a lot of people around the NFL are talking about. Do you think he can build on his performance? How can he build on his performance from last week?
I think the big thing is just continuing to find ways to incrementally get better at some of your weaknesses, right? And that's all every player in the NFL is trying to do. And I think with Jalen Hurts, you're starting to see that. Last week, we saw him step up into a muddy pocket and hit Dallas Goedert over the middle of the field for a first down. We saw the touch throws along the sideline. We saw him understand how to get to his check down fast to create yards after catch by those running backs, right? So just continuing to see him make those steps. And if he's able to do that week after week after week, I think that will be a big sign for his future development. And if you're an Eagles fan, look, honestly, the Eagles obviously looking at his development, right? And looking to see what is his ceiling, what can he be for this team moving forward. I think that's the goal. You're trying to see him continue to make those strides. And it all started last week, obviously, with a huge game against the Kansas City Chiefs.
And, of course, one of the things that people have been talking about, people have been wondering about, is the run game. Can it get going? 2 weeks ago, they had 3 carries, last week 10. They're facing a solid defense here in Carolina, a lot of speed. How does the Eagles' run game stack up against the Panthers?
Well, look, this is a fast defense, but when you look at last week against the Dallas Cowboys, now the Cowboys, they have taken this approach now for the last month where they're going to try and play power football, get downhill, give those running backs, Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard, plenty of run. They went 30 carries, over 200 yards for the 3rd straight week in a row. So I don't know if the Eagles' game plan is going to look exactly like the Dallas Cowboys did a week ago. That said, you can run against this defense at times. But the Eagles are going to try and find those matchups. And I think that's going to be an important thing to watch here early in this football game. Where will they feel they can capitalize on some of the weaknesses here in this young Carolina defense?
Well, and one thing that's going to help that is we look at the offensive starters. Who is back? Jordan Mailata is going to be back on the offensive line, going to be a huge help there, protecting the quarterback, getting the run game going against this Carolina front. How big of a boost does this provide? It's huge.
I think anytime you add 6'8", 380 pounds back to your offensive line.
Literally huge.
Literally
boost.
a huge boost with Jordan Mailata back in the lineup. Now, we're seeing here with the starting lineup, Andre Dillard left tackle, Jordan Mailata at right tackle. Obviously, no Lane Johnson here for this game. So Jack Driscoll getting the start at right guard. That's what this offensive line reportedly will look like here this afternoon. I'm excited to see, but you know what? It's another offensive line combination, Amy, as we're keeping track here early on in the season.
What do you make of Mailata at right tackle?
It's something he's done a little bit of, over the course of his career. I think the big thing, when you're looking at guys making that change along the offensive line, if you've played one position your entire life, that's muscle memory, that's ingrained, that's tough to break. Jordan Mailata's only been playing football for 3 years. He doesn't have those habits. He's still learning how to play the position. So, you got to switch from left to right. Not as big of a deal for him as it may be for others.
Let's talk about this guy, right? Well, Darius Slay, I just wanted to say congratulations.
No question.
Yeah, he has another kid as of this week. So very exciting for him as well. Again, we're talking about that offensive line. Let's talk about the matchup. This Carolina defense, they have built this team off of speed. I was listening to a Matt Rule interview, and he's done this really at every level that he's coached, but his philosophy in building this team was to get young players who are the fastest players he can get. And that's what you see on both sides of the ball, but especially on this defense. They're not as physical, but they are so fast that they don't necessarily have to be super physical. It's finesse and it's speed. What do you think about just what they do so well on defense?
Yeah, I think when you look at his blueprint, right, coming into his first season, so last year in 2020, what did they do in the NFL draft? Every single pick went to the defensive side of the football. They didn't draft one offensive player back in 2020. So clearly a point of emphasis for Matt Rule and for that staff. They wanted to get better and faster on that side of the ball. And I think that that's something that we see on film now this year. The way that they played defense a year ago, a lot of drop 8, a lot of zone coverage, very little blitz. This year now, as these guys are a little bit older, they're a little bit more experienced, we're seeing a lot more pressure. We're seeing more man-to-man coverage, a little bit more zone here in recent weeks just because of some of the injuries in the secondary. But this is a team that wants to be able to get after the quarterback and attack you from all different levels of the field. It's not just a 4-man rush. You're going to see speed off the edge, speed from the second level, speed from the third level, trying to attack Jalen Hurts in this football game.
Well, and here we're looking at Fletcher Cox, the conversation this week, of course, and Jonathan Gannon talked about wanting to get him more involved. We've seen Javon Hargrave has put up the numbers, and that doesn't necessarily mean that Fletcher's not doing anything, but it is a different scheme that Fletcher hasn't played in before as he's adjusting to that. Jonathan Gannon wanting to get him more involved. What do you think about just his shifting gears into this different type of defensive scheme and how it fits his skill set?
Well, we know that sacks come in bunches and production typically comes in bunches. We've seen Javon Hargrave make the big plays week after week after week. He is seeing more of the single teams, and Fletcher Cox is getting more of the double teams. That said, and it's funny, I think that these two things are very attached, Amy.
Absolutely.
I think when you look at the run game, the Eagles' inability to stop the run over the last couple of weeks, that's resulted in a lot of third and ones, a lot of second and shorts. And so when you're in that situation as a defensive coordinator, that kind of handcuffs you as to what kind of fronts you can use. It's not like it's third and long and you can get a little bit more exotic. You can move guys around. You can line up 4 guys on one side and put another defensive end on an opposite side and create some of those matchups. When it's third and 1, you got to line up and play because you got to respect both the run and the pass. And so if the Eagles can stop the run at a higher rate on early downs, that's going to keep the offense behind the sticks. And now maybe you let those defensive linemen get after it a little bit harder, put those ears back, and get after the quarterback.
I love that term, put those ears back. Let's take a look at the guys we will be seeing on defense starting on the field today for the Eagles as we look at the defensive starters. And, of course, they're going to be facing a Carolina team. Again, I keep saying on the rise, but that really is the way I would describe this team. And Sam Darnold, a quarterback who has had new life in Carolina, it seems to be working really well for him. The Cowboys were able to throw him off last week. Did they kind of give the Eagles a blueprint here?
I think it's a blueprint that a lot of defenses try to follow every single week,
right.
And that's we want to hit the opposing quarterback.
Yeah.
We want to be in his face every single chance we get, and that was something Dallas was able to do at a high rate last week against Sam Darnold. I think when you look at this Eagles defense, a lot of it's going to center around that defensive front. You look at number 91 breaking the entire team down, and obviously we know the leadership Fletcher Cox brings to that unit as a whole, but I think overall, when you look at this defensive front, their ability to get after Sam Darnold in this game, it's going to be pivotal.
Yeah, and of course, Christian McCaffrey not going to be on the field.
Yep.
That'll help a little bit, but even with him being out, the Panthers were still really productive in the run game. You mentioned Sam Darnold's ability to run 5 rushing touchdowns. He leads the league in rushing touchdowns for a quarterback, and then, of course, Chuba Hubbard really productive for them in McCaffrey's absence as well.
Yeah, I think when you look at the run game here for the Carolina Panthers, without Christian McCaffrey, they're going to try and beat you in a couple different ways. Number 1, Sam Darnold, you mentioned, leading the NFL in rushing touchdowns, and that's not just quarterback sneaks. We're seeing the option run game. We're seeing him take off for QB draws for 12-yard touchdowns against the Cowboys last week. He's able to get home in a lot of ways. So the Eagles have to keep him contained. Then you look at Chuba Hubbard. Scouting report on him. World-class sprinter coming out of Canada as a high schooler. He's got the ability to get to the edge. And then they've got Royce Freeman, a former third-round pick, who's kind of that grinder between the tackles. So my guess is we're going to see a lot more perimeter runs with Chuba Hubbard in this game, but we'll see what Carolina ultimately decides to do.
Well, and I think in the passing game, the guy to watch for Carolina, DJ Moore, it seems
Yes.
like he and Sam Darnold really have quite a combo. One of the top QB receiver chemistry duos in the NFL. And of course, I would love to say the Eagles have another one of those top QB receiver duos here with Jalen Hurts and Devonta Smith. Of course, they knew each other before they both got here. That helps so much with that connection, that chemistry, that timing. And earlier this week, what I loved in one of Nick Sirianni's press conferences was he was talking about Devonta Smith and his jab step. And he was talking about how he always teaches receivers with a video of Allen Iverson doing a crossover. And, it was so cool to hear him talk about his love for Allen Iverson and for basketball and how that's such an example for receivers. But he talked about how Devonta Smith does two things with that jab step that really throw off defenders. It's a quick jab, but it's a meaningful jab. He sells it really well. So when you think about his connection with Jalen Hurts, they seem to be really clicking. How do you think that momentum will carry them into today's matchup that they're facing against Carolina without a couple guys in the secondary?
Yeah, and what I love about that comparison too, not just from a technical standpoint, right, when you're looking at the releases versus the crossover in basketball. Look, Allen Iverson was one of the more undersized players in his game, and that was the knock on Devonta Smith coming out of college, right? And so when you have that in your bag where it's like, all right, look, I'm a little bit smaller, I'm a little bit skinnier than the guy lining up across from me, you've got to find ways to overcome that. And so when you've got that kind of freaky ability to be able to maneuver your body, show that body control to win early in the down with the quickness and the short area burst, he's got a little bit of that. And so that's interesting for a coach to be able to make that comparison. As far as that relationship between he and Jalen Hurts, clearly that does help. He's the #1 target getter right now in this passing game. He's got faith in him to be able to win at all three levels. I think we saw last week, everybody here in Philadelphia, the reason why Devonta Smith was a top 10 pick, why he won the Heisman Trophy. We saw it all from him last week. Some minor mistakes, certainly the one that took the touchdown off the board. That's an easily correctable mistake on Devonta's part, but I would expect a continued production from him in this passing game.
Well, and as you look at the matchup here for the Eagles offense, and again, we've talked about how fast and how young the Carolina defense is, but another way they've built this team is this quote-unquote positionless player, right? You have a guy like Brian Burns, who you could imagine playing multiple positions on a defense. Jeremy Chin, Hassan Reddick. They have guys who can kind of play multiple positions. A lot of the tweeners. They've built an offense off of, or a defense off of tweeners. How does that confuse an offense?
Well, you've got, we're going to get into a little bit what they do defensively a little bit later in the show, but I think when you've got all these guys that can do a number of different things, now it's still up to the defensive coordinator to put those guys in those positions to not be predictable, but yeah, they absolutely have a lot of those hybrid players. They are, however, missing one of those guys here in this game. Shaq Thompson, the star linebacker for Carolina, he's a guy that's been a blitzer. He's made some great interceptions this year so far, playing in coverage, so that is a key piece in the middle of that defense that will not be playing here today.
Well, of course, we've credited with a lot of Carolina's development to Matt Rule, a guy you know quite well, Fran. You worked with him for several years at Temple, like right down the hall. What was your experience like working with him, and how has it been to see him make this journey to the NFL?
It's been awesome to see him make that journey, and it was a guy that, it's one of my first days there at Temple, got to know Coach Rule, and he's just been such a great coach wherever he's been. He was a defensive line coach my first year at Temple, became the quarterback coach the year after that, and just continued to make that rise. He's won wherever he's been. Wish him the best of luck every other game here on the Eagles
not
the rest of the season, but not today.
Not today. Do you have any funny stories about him?
I've got plenty, but I don't know that we've got the time to be able to get into all of them.
That's a conversation for another day. One of the other areas of emphasis that the Eagles have talked about this week, and Coach Nick Sirianni has spoken at length about it, is cleaning up the penalties. It's something that the Eagles have struggled with. He says it really comes down to discipline. And not only does it start with him, that's what he has said, but he says, look, when you're known as a team that gets a lot of penalties, other teams know that, the referees know that, and they're looking for it. So it almost is like this self-fulfilling prophecy where it snowballs, is the term that Coach used. They know we do this a lot, so they're looking for it, so it happens even more. How difficult can that be to overcome?
It can be, but I think the big thing is that everybody's just got to do their job. And that's the thing, is that when you're the head coach and you look at this and you say, all right, well, is the false start penalty the same as a delay of game penalty, the same as an offsides, the same as a personal foul? No, they're all different, and they all happen for different reasons. So everybody has just got to look inward and say, we've got to be more disciplined, more cognizant of what we're doing on each and every play, and prevent these penalties. We've seen some of these teams, the third and long offside penalties. Those have to stop, right? Some of those delay of games where, as Coach Sirianni talked about, the play comes in slow and it's not communicated well. Those have to get cleaned up. But when you look at it from a big picture standpoint, it's everybody just has to do their job.
Yeah, all right, and with that, we are now going to bring in the Eagles insider, Dave Spadaro, who is on hand in Charlotte. Dave, another really talented opponent today for the Eagles, an Eagles team so eager to get back in the win column. Is this the kind of game that quarterback Jalen Hurts just has to go out, put the team on his shoulders, and just find a way to win?
Yeah, it kind of feels that way, Amy. Look, I mean, the Eagles have a big game today, and then 5 days later, it's Tampa Bay. So really, in these next 5 games, the season's kind of direction will be defined. You win today, you go into Thursday with a lot better feeling in your mouth. And I feel like at this moment, career start number 9, Jalen Hurts needs to step up and just do it. Whatever it takes to do it. We've seen it in the past. If he's going to be the guy, then be the guy today. Let's see you be the guy today. And put the Eagles on your shoulders and win this football game. It certainly won't be easy. We've got fans here chanting, run the ball, I get it. But there are going to be some opportunities for the Eagles offense against this Carolina defense. Jalen has to be great against the blitz. He's got to make great decisions, be accurate, get the football out quickly. New look offensive line again. So a lot on his shoulders. Let's see him carry the Eagles across the finish line.
The progress of Jalen Hurts certainly will be a big storyline in this game. Is there something else, though, Dave, that you'll be keeping your eye on for this one?
Yeah, I mean, look, one of the ideas of quote-unquote key, okay, like I think that they must establish some kind of a ground game. I mean, this is a team that gave up 245 rushing yards against the Cowboys. I'm not saying run it. I still believe in throwing the football early, getting a lead and running late. But you got to make this defense honest, Fran, or else they're going to tee off and blitz. And that's a dangerous recipe for the Eagles.
Well, and Dave, what about the storyline that you're going to be watching in today's matchup? What's that for you today?
Yeah, I mean, Amy, for me, the storyline is going to be this defense, which has been so passive for the previous 2 weeks. Really started the instant Brandon Graham went down against San Francisco. The Eagles have offered very little resistance. For the rest of that game against San Francisco, certainly at Dallas, and then last week at Kansas City, got off the field one time. What do you do against a Carolina offensive line that is missing its left tackle, that isn't really that great to begin with, that's got some excellent playmakers on the outside, and doesn't have Christian McCaffrey? The defense, and also, by the way, a lot of criticism at Fletcher Cox this week. Darius Slay getting into it on social media. It's time for this Eagles defense to step up and play physical, more aggressive, put the Carolina Panthers on their heels kind of defense today. That's really important to see. I just think that a veteran group, they need to have some success moving forward here. So that starts today.
Yeah, it's certainly a great opportunity this afternoon. Dave, thanks so much. Enjoy the game.
All right, guys, thank you.
All right, Fran, what do you think this team needs to do to come out of Carolina with a win?
Well, we talked a little bit about it earlier in the show here, Amy. I think when you look at the ability to pressure Sam Darnold, and look, I know the book on him, there was that big quote a couple years ago on Monday Night Football, him seeing ghosts. I personally think that's a little bit overplayed, and I hate that happened to Sam Darnold.
We'll
because
never
that's
live
something
it down.
Every quarterback, not just a young quarterback, every quarterback has that happen to him in a game. So it's so unfortunate that's something that's going to always kind of hang over his shoulder. That said, when you look at over the course of his career, when he has had games where the defensive line, where the rush has got to him, it has severely impacted him, maybe more so than other quarterbacks. And so I think when you look at this defensive front, the ability to get home with 4, and we know the Eagles have not been a big-time blitzing operation. They're one of the least amount of teams that have blitzed a lot here in the league so far this year. But I think when you look at their ability to get home with 4, it's going to be imperative here in this game. Win those matchups one-on-one. Cam Irving, the Panthers left tackle, he's out for this game. It looks like they're going to be shuffling some things along the offensive line. Potentially Taylor Moton moving from right tackle to left tackle. The rookie Braden Christensen coming in at right tackle. A lot of movement. Eagles have to win those matchups.
Yeah, that's an opportunity to take advantage of maybe something vulnerable on the other side. And I'm looking at exactly the same thing. Something this week everyone's been talking about is that the Eagles need to execute when they're in the red zone, that they need to score touchdowns when they're in the red zone. Obviously, that's the case. But the numbers are actually a little surprising to me when I looked at it, because they are doing much better in that area than maybe a lot of people have thought. Despite the struggles, the Eagles are 10th in the red zone with executing almost 70%, and this is an area where the Carolina defense is weak. They're tied for last. They're allowing 100% in the red zone, so their red zone defense not so great. Plenty of opportunity for the Eagles to execute, get some points on the board, which of course is how you win the game. Of course, plenty to watch in this one for the Eagles with so much talent on both teams, and with that, we will send it over to our very own Merrill Reese and Mike Quick to get their players to watch for today's matchup.
Eagles and the Carolina Panthers, when you are 1-3 each week, becomes more critical. Mike, who is your Eagle to watch?
Well, speaking of critical, I think it's critical that you get better linebacker play. I think we're going to see a lot more of the second-year play out of Colorado, Davion Taylor, and I'm hoping that he makes an impact in this football game. That'll be my guy to watch.
My guy to watch is a guy that should have been watched week 1, 2, 3, and 4, and that's a guy by the name of Miles Sanders. I think the Eagles need to control the game more. I think they have to run the ball more. And Miles Sanders is a talented running back who can make a difference. Now back to you, Amy.
All right, thanks, guys. The Philadelphia Eagles and Axalta Coating Systems have built a roster of all-pro teachers. Go to PhiladelphiaEagles.com/Axalta All-Pro Teachers to view this year's outstanding recipients. Eagles fans score official NFL gear every week just by drinking Pepsi. Purchase Eagles Pepsi bottles or packs, scan the code to start building points, and redeem them for Eagles gear or a shot at the grand prize every single week. Visit MadeForEaglesWatching.com for rules and to enter. In an Eagles rookie class full of early contributors, fifth-rounder Kenny Gainwell has really carved out a role for himself in this Eagles offense. The running back out of Memphis has been making an impact with his versatility as a pass catcher, and he joins Mike Quick for this week's one-on-one presented by Pond Hockey. Take a look.
Happy to be joined by Eagles running back Kenny Gainwell. Kenny G, how are you, man?
Doing good. Blessed to be here,
I know that you have a YouTube instructional channel. Tell us a little bit about what you have going on there.
Yeah, so it's just a channel I made like a couple of months ago. Just wanted to show my life, and do things. I game a little bit. I be on Twitch too. So I game and take what I do from twitching into YouTube and just put it all together, I just trying to make something fun.
The 2020 season, you decided to opt out. Tell me a little bit about what went into that decision.
It was a family decision. A couple of family members that passed away from COVID. And, I talked to my parents and talked to my grandma about it, and we just went on with the decision to opt out.
It evidently didn't hurt you football-wise because you appear to be really sharp. What did you do during that time to stay football sharp?
I took myself to the hot city of Orlando, Florida, down there with my guy, Bert Watson, and we worked for 7 months straight, leading up to Pro Day and things of that nature, just working hard every day.
Tell me how your skill set fits this Nick Sirianni offense.
My ability to be able to run routes and be all over the field. That guy, sort of kind of a gadget guy that can be moved around a lot and be able to use my skills of catching to my advantage of, being able to just know and catch the ball.
What has been the most difficult transition in terms of what you have to do and produce on the field?
My mindset is stuck on, being great, being a pro. I've been having this mindset for a long time since I was in high school. I always wanted to be a pro. So it really wasn't nothing. I take the day and I kind of carry myself a different type of way.
You've got a younger brother and an older brother. How did they help you in this process?
My younger brother just keeping me focused, and that's the same with my older brother too, just keeping me focused on, what's the task, what you gotta do, knowing your objective of the day and attacking it every day.
As you look at the Carolina Panthers and get prepared to go out and play Carolina this weekend, give me the scouting report. What do you see in the Carolina Panthers defense?
I see a little bit of everything, but going off of that, I'm just gonna focus on myself, and just learn what I have to do for this week and know what I have to do for this week to go out and attack their defense.
Kenny G, thank you very much for joining us and best of luck in Carolina.
So I appreciate you.
When you have those sleeper guys in college and then they get to the NFL and they're really good and they make you look really smart. Kenny Gainwell is that for me. I love seeing what he's done in Philadelphia. And earlier this week we heard from Nick Sirianni, who talked about Gainwell and just the scouting process for him. Sirianni talked about when he was in San Diego and the role of Danny Woodhead, when he was in Indianapolis, the role of Nyheim Hines, and he saw Gainwell and was like, that's the guy. He's the one who's going to add that layer to this offense. What do you think about how Gainwell and his game has kind of evolved and taken this, added another layer to the Eagles offense?
Yeah, it's very clear that he is the hurry-up back number one when the Eagles try and go hurry up in those 2-minute situations, when they're trying to throw the ball to move the football downfield. And then last week, I mean, he was the pre-snap motion guy. We saw him in jet sweeps. We saw him in orbit sweeps. We saw a couple of screen passes to Kenny Gainwell. And so I think we're starting to see that gadget element of Kenny Gainwell's skill set come into play. He's used as a receiver. He's used as a runner. We saw him get the red zone touchdown, his second of his career last week against Kansas City. His role is just going to continue to grow. It's going to be really fun to watch him continue to develop.
Well, and it seems like he's been really productive, maybe even more so than a lot of fans expected, and a really different running back, a complement to Miles Sanders. Both guys are great in the run game and in the passing game, but very different running backs. A lot of people have been wondering why they haven't seen more of Miles Sanders, and they've seen a lot of Kenny Gainwell, and of course the two of them are a good complement to each other. Has that just been a matchup thing?
Yeah, I think ultimately when you look at offense and how running backs are rotated especially, a lot of it can be just kind of predicated on how often the offense is on the field. And we've seen some stretches where this Eagles offense has gone 3 and out, multiple drives in a row. It's tough to get into a rhythm, not just from a running back rotation standpoint, but then from a run game standpoint. And so if you only run 55 plays on offense or 50 plays on offense, well, now all of a sudden, your run game, those numbers just aren't there. And so I think that's the big thing. If this offense can continue to get into a rhythm, you're going to see more balls going around for everybody involved, not just Miles Sanders, but everybody on the offensive side.
I guess that is really how it works, that the offense has to be on the field for the running backs to get their chance.
That's usually a good thing.
It's just like science or something like that. That brings us to our Rico extra point, talking about the matchup that this Eagles offense is going to have today against Carolina.
Yeah, the running backs are going to be involved, not just as ball carriers, but obviously in pass protection as well. And that is a big point of emphasis going up against Carolina. And I think we could take a look here at a play that they've run numerous times when you look at their pressure scheme. One of the better teams in the NFL so far in 2021 at breaking down protections. They've got a lot of speed on the perimeter, namely this guy, the former first-round pick, Brian Burns. With him coming off the edge, one of the more explosive guys getting home to the quarterback. And what they love to do is called overload the front, where they're going to bring a bunch of players down on one side of the formation. Wow, you got 4 rushers over on the left side. As an offense, you've got to slide the protection that way. You've got to account for the threat of those guys coming off the ball. Well, now you slide your protection that way. Those players all drop out. Now you've got 3 blocking 1 because you only got 1 rusher coming from that side now. And now you can create some of these one-on-one matchups. A defensive tackle loops inside. A linebacker rushes from the second level. And now what do you have? You've got Brian Burns scot-free to the quarterback. Amy, he's got 3 sacks here so far in 2021. All 3 have looked exactly like this, where no one breathes on him on his way to the quarterback. And when you've got a guy that can run 4.4 at 245 pounds, 250 pounds, getting home without being touched, that's a recipe for disaster. So the Eagles have got to be on their P's and Q's in this game when it comes to pass protection rules, who's got who. That's Jalen Hurts, that's Jason Kelce, the entire O-line, running backs, everybody involved.
Yeah, you cannot have free runners heading towards the quarterback. That is not how you're going to win the game. Of course, don't forget, as soon as this game is over, join us for the post-game show presented by Rico for instant analysis, as well as coaches and players press conferences live. And for now, we look to see if the Eagles can get it done in Carolina against a young and speedy team. It's sure to be a good one down south. Enjoy the game, everybody, and fly, Eagles, fly.